Welcome back to Breakthrough, guys. My name is Ryan Ortega.
And I'm Brett English.
And at Breakthrough, we bring you guests that help you break through to the next stage, to the highest level. This could be spiritually, mentally, financially, whatever it is. We're going to find the guests who will help. We're going to help you break through that hurdle. Today, we've got a very special guest, Rebecca Worrall.
Now, Rebecca Worrall is definitely a breakthrough specialist. She's given me many breakthroughs in our conversations and in different scenarios and workshops that I've done of hers. And she's an NLP practitioner, a hypno-therapist, a breathwork practitioner. She does astrology workshops, she's a personal trainer, and a self-coach. She does one-on-one sessions to help you reach your highest potential.
I always find that I'm limited by language in terms of labeling what I do. Even the word empowerment coach makes me cringe. The only word that I can come to close is a self coach, but not a self coach. It's like I coach people on their nature of self.
So self-development coach?
Yeah, I guess so, but I'm even questioning into the self that we think is being developed.
Yeah.
So even throw back a bit more. Yeah. The main thing that I think I love doing is I help people to liberate themselves from their mind by inquiring into their true nature and who they are. So we look into who is their identity, like who are you really? And a lot of that comes from Eastern philosophy. So I like to bring Eastern philosophy over to the West in a way that is understandable and practical.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. I don't like putting things into boxes, but I know it's necessary to be able to, just for ease of communication.
Yeah.
So yeah, self-coach, and the reason why I think I say self-coach is, I don't coach on anyone on anything else apart from themselves. They might come in because of their relationship or their business or something, and for me, it's less about the problem that they come in with and more about the person that thinks they have the problem. Does that make sense?
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What are some of the things that you see occurring often with clients and workshops and things like that? People coming for help. What are they struggling with?
So I find that it's really often split between what they think the problem is and what the problem actually is. So I find often the presenting issues are things like even diagnoses like anxiety, depression, ADHD, or procrastination, self-sabotage. On the deeper level, things like issues with self-worth, attachment to external coordinates to deliver a sense of worth internally, whether that's through achievement or opinions of other people or material gain. So there can be a lot of presenting problems there, but for me, what it always comes back down to is a lack of inquiry or a lack of investigation into the self that has those problems. And I find that quite often, and I have done it, do it, and will continue to do it. We believe what the mind says straight away, like it's absolute truth, right? We hear the mind saying, I'm not worthy, I have this feeling of lack of worth. And this is my problem with the self-help industry, is that I feel that we have capitalized on this concept of self-worth, or this concept of self-love, or this concept of positivity, like it's something that you have lost, like change in your pocket, like gone in the wash or something, and something that you can get back. So for me, when people come, I've lost my self-worth and I want to find it again, and I was like, interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so who is the self that has lost the worth? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, before we get into any of this, we should probably be quite clear on who's come like with these problems, sort of thing. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you've got these thoughts, right? That you're unworthy and things like that. And they said, yeah. And I said, so, and you want to feel worthy, is that right? Is that kind of what you want to feel? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, we could go about this two ways. You could go down that path and try to find your worth, and maybe you'll find it, and that'll give you worth. Or, how would you feel if your mind wasn't saying those things about your worth? Is it actually you don't have worth, or is what makes you feel that way is hearing your mind say that.
Yeah.
You
It's
know
almost like
what
they're
I
programming
mean?
themselves with the language they use, and
Yeah, and they're
okay.
believing that. So I'll start to break down that paradigm. They're like, oh, well, actually, I guess if I just didn't hear that in my head, I'm not worthy. I guess then it wouldn't be a problem. I was like, yeah. So then
Yeah,
it becomes less about climbing this mountain of finding the worth and all the books and all the things, and starting to investigate and open up the relationship between us and the content of our mind.
Yeah.
Because your mind can say anything, and if you're going to believe it with worth, you're going to believe it with you're not good enough, you know, that's why they abandoned you, that's why they left. Your mind can say anything, and you're going to believe it. So your problem is not with self-worth, your problem is with your
With yourself.
like, you know, it's
with your thinking, right?
Yeah.
Your self-talk.
yeah, you know, and that's where it starts to get really deep, right, into the whole, okay, well, if you're your thoughts, then who are you?
The thinker of
Yeah,
thoughts.
dude, yeah.
Yeah, right, but
Yeah.
that tends to be what they say, though, and I'm like, okay, so you're a thinker of your thoughts, right? And they're like, yeah, and I said, okay, so you think your thoughts? And they're like, yeah. I was like, are you sure? They're like, yeah, well, I'll think so. And then I'm like, okay, no, that's cool. So you think the thoughts of the self-doubt? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, but if you think them, does that mean you should just be able to stop them? And they're like,
True.
well, yeah. And I was like, okay, so can you stop them? And they're like, well, I'm sure I could if I tried. And I was like, well, you're here, so you've probably tried and you probably can't, right?
Okay,
And they're
yeah,
like,
that's right.
okay, cool, so yeah, okay, I can't stop thinking them. I said, okay, so do you think maybe you're hearing them rather than thinking them? You know, because if I can turn a light switch on, that assumes I can turn the light switch off, right? If I
Yeah.
can pick something up, that assumes I can put it down. But if I can't turn it off, then I shouldn't be able to turn it on. You know what I mean? Like if I've done one, you should be able to do the other. So it comes into a thing where the biggest realization can be that they're not actually the actual thinker of their thoughts, they're more of the listener of their thoughts.
Okay,
And that can
yeah.
open up so much, you know?
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just an observer of what's going on internally.
Yeah. You know, what's the intention of your mind? You know, if that's not you, why do you think your mind might be telling you you're unworthy? Like, God forbid you're worthy. What would you do if you believed you were worthy, that your mind would see as a massive, oh my God, that could potentially be disastrous? You might ask for their number. You might buy that house. You might dress the way you want to dress, because God forbid you feel worthy and you do exactly what you want to do. And the thing that the ego is so afraid of, you know, happens, which a lot of the time is judgment or that lack of safety.
Yeah, the
you know?
fear.
Yeah. So it's pretty smart, really. Like the mind will put you in that feeling of not feeling safe. You judge yourself saying the things that you're afraid that other people will say to you, so that you won't do the thing that you want to do to hear it from other people
Yeah.
for what the mind's already saying to you.
Yeah.
So what is the root cause of that, do you think?
Well, as far as I've found with my own investigating, and it depends on kind of whether you're going to Eastern philosophy or Western kind of psychology, you know, the goal of the mind I've found is just for safety. And so not happiness, probably even less safety, more survival.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I went to a seminar once, and the guy said, your ego wants to get you from the maternity ward to your deathbed safely. That's it. And if all it could do is defecate and eat and sleep, it would do that. That's all that it actually wants you to do. Anything else to the ego is extra. And so, you know, that depends on the ego's, the idea of safety is created in the first 7 years of your life. So whatever environment you found yourself in, that's going to be what is most familiar. You know, safety, familiar, survival, because your parents help you to survive. The first 7 years, you are so codependent on them to survive. You know, and your brain's learning like a sponge. This is what it means to survive. I need to do this to get food. I need to do this to get love. I need to do this to get my nappy changed. I need to do this to get them to put me down to bed. I need to do this not to get told off. I need to do this to fit in at school. Then we create this big thing of the patterns we need to do, and the things we need to be, and the things we need to say in order to survive in the way that the brain has understood it in the first 7 years of our life. You know.
Damn.
Yeah, damn. How do you,
Take in.
how would you go about if it's someone who's never really delved into this kind of stuff, taking them through that journey? How would you go about it? Like, what questions would you ask them to inquire about themselves, or?
The first thing I would say and ask is, first of all, when it comes to my kind of coaching sessions or workshops, I think that we need to just become aware of the content of our mind,
Yeah.
like what is going on, because if you don't know what the problem is, or if you don't know there's a problem, how can we go about fixing the problem if you don't know what it is? And quite often I find people want to go straight to the solution of self-worth without looking at why they feel unworthy in the first place. And that can also be a very smart trip for the ego too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's go straight to the solution, the self-worth tip of the mountain, so I don't need to go down to the deeper, darker, repressed parts of myself, the darker thoughts, the ways that I behave that I might feel shameful about because it's not really me, trying to be liked, cracking that joke that might be dissing someone else and you feel a bit shitty after because no one laughed, so it wasn't even worth it. And you wouldn't usually even say that anyway if it was just, And it might even go things to like cheating or abuse and ways that we behave, that aren't really us. And if you can't look at that first, if you can't start with self-honesty, right, it's got to start there. Like if you can't start with self-honesty, then there is nowhere for you to go, because you can't even start with where you're at. People want to be over there. I want to be at self-worth. I want to be at self-love. I want to be over there. And it's like, but you're totally keeping in the blind spot what put you there in the first place. Or that's all in the dark. We've got to put that in the light first. See what is the problem. Let's look at the landscape. Like what is going on in here? Like out there, what I can see here in front of us, right? The microphone, you guys, the chairs, the table, the bottles. What is the landscape inside of me? And nothing here I take personal. That's a microphone, that's a mannequin, that's a bottle. That I can look at it, right? That's what I'm looking at, and I'm the one that's looking. So when you have the courage to actually look at the landscape inside, then I might say, okay, well, can you feel now that space between the content of your inner body, like your thoughts? Imagine I'm looking at my thoughts and my emotions and my experiences and images in my head right now and behaviors. If you're able to look at that, there must be two, right?
Yeah.
You can't be looking at something and be the thing that the looker is looking at. You'd be looking at your own eye without a mirror, and you can't do that.
Yeah, no,
right?
True. Yeah.
You can't do, a knife can't cut itself, a tongue can't taste itself. If you're going to be observing something, there must be two. There has to be the observed and the observer.
Yeah.
And so that already, within 5 minutes, can create a massive sense of liberation. It's got nothing to do with spirituality. It's got nothing to do with astral projection. It's got nothing to do with challenging religion. And I'm constantly saying back to my clients, tell me if that feels right in your experience. And so far they haven't said no, because they can't deny it. That they are observing the thought. Okay, can you see that you are the one observing, and that there is the thought,
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh wow. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's enough. And that pondering, and then they're like driving all the way home, like, who am I? Like, who is the one watching? Because they've never done the foundation of even realizing that there is that separation there. And that's what a lot of Eastern philosophy shows you. That there's the content of the mind, and then there's the self that experiences it. And it's as impersonal as the bottles on the table, as your emotions are to you. It's impersonal. I can't control that bottle of orange juice there, the way it's standing there and the way it looks and stuff. I can't control my thoughts or my emotions to that same extent. I can influence it. I can knock that bottle over, and I can do things to influence my mind and my emotions. But at the same time, one of the hardest things to accept is, we can accept quite easily that I can't control the way you're doing this, and I can't control the way you're doing that.
Yeah.
I can at some level accept that, right? If you say something mean to me, it might be even harder, because I really want to control what you're saying. This way we try to control people's perceptions of us, right? But at some level we might feel defeated enough to realize we have no control over anyone else. But what's even harder to accept is that we actually aren't even in control of things within our own self.
True.
Thoughts,
Yeah.
emotions, anxieties, living in the past, living in the future. And I feel like we don't want to go to that place of accepting that we're not in that control, you know, because if there's two, when we acknowledge, look at the landscape, okay, we draw the landscape, then we recognize there's two. Oh shit, if there's two, I'm the one that's looking, that's the one I'm in control of. I'm actually not in control of what I'm looking at. So it can be this really beautiful roller coaster of emotions. You're like, I'm not my thoughts. And you're like, oh fuck, I'm not my thoughts. And you realize like, so this coaching session that I went to enter in with you to change the thing that I can't control, I realized that I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that would be where I start.
Okay.
And then that same place, we come back to forever. Like forever. Because the spiritual ego, we know, right? Like the spiritual ego is a funny thing. Like it'll really get you on that path to enlightenment, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, like for what though? To what? Because quite often when we're moving towards something, it can be the purpose to move away from something.
That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
enlightenment.
Fair.
Yeah. I wonder what you're moving away from. You know? So then the ego like feels a bit naked because you've taken the mask off. So it's this coaching with me is a beautiful paradox, but this whole journey is a beautiful paradox. You think you got it, and then you don't have it. You realize you don't have it.
True.
Yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah. And so I think what's important for me is to deliver this experience to people, whether it's someone on their own, in a workshop, on a YouTube video, in a way that isn't labeled as spirituality or as this or is that. I want it to be widely accessible, and it is widely accessible because like we all breathe, we all think thoughts. No, that's again grammatically incorrect. We all experience thoughts, we all experience emotions, we all experience things. But I feel that it's beautiful though because so many spiritual practices has become quite mainstream and a lot more accepted.
Yeah.
Perhaps that wouldn't have been the case if we kept it quite logical and just to our experiences I did then. But it's starting to sweep, as everything does, to the other end of the pendulum when it's like the spiritual people and the non-spiritual people. And I want to create that blend where you can have a spiritual experience through everything that we're talking about, but I don't even need to mention that word, spirituality. As soon as I mention that word, you're already coming up with your own ideas of what that means, you know.
The labels are tarnished, I suppose.
Yeah, like if anyone said the word God to me before I was 19, you're officially like not talking in my head.
Oh, okay.
Because I grew up with because I grew up with what I experienced as quite
smothering
this is how
Christianity.
that's exactly it. And
Even-
I know we've talked about that quite
Even
a
when I
lot.
heard the word Jesus, it would just be like, but now like I look in his teachings and I really accepting of it, and I try to pull the essence out of it, and I really appreciate like his life and his teaching. But back then it was sort of like, oh, fucking Jesus smugglers, you know what I mean? They were trying to trying to bring
smugglers.
it in, yeah. Like no matter what happened, just like come back to Jesus and God. I'm like, come on, man, like stop doing that. Like it just annoyed me.
You can feel that. You can feel that wrench in your stomach, right?
I can still
Like-
do it even now, yeah.
Yeah, like and
I need to get rid of
I do
that.
too, and that's cool. And same thing with, you know, that's the thing when you start to put things in labels, our past experience and our own perceptions that we might have created to kind of defend ourselves from feeling a bit must believe in God. I created this barrier that was like, fuck God, fuck Jesus, none of that exists. Like, you know, so if anyone tried to say anything about it, even if they're just talking about it, I'd be like, you're trying to convert me to be a Christian.
Like,
you know?
paranoid, like freaking off the cults.
Yeah, my mum's side is Catholic and Christian, and I remember I got a book. I'm dog obsessed. Like I love animals. I love dogs so much. And I remember she gave me a book, and it was like dog stories, but I read dog stories, but it said dog parables.
Ah, okay.
So what it is it's the like parables and stuff and stories from the Bible using dogs to illustrate the stories. And I'm like,
No.
and this is coming up. I've never thrown that book so hard in the bin. No, I didn't throw it in the bin. I kept it on the bookshelf. I was like, look, I love the dogs. But it was a really, now that I actually say it, it was quite a beautiful twist that the universe sent me. Like, it's something I love so much. But as soon as I realized it was like Christian, like the Bible and stuff, I was like, what? And then I couldn't quite grasp how I could love something so much because it had dogs, but it was something that I hated so much, which was Christianity, you know.
Yeah.
And I find that that's that blend, right? Like it doesn't.
The shame that's happened,
Yeah.
that push of God has actually pulled people away from God inadvertently.
Oh man, it's a very dividing topic.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
And it's just the use of the word God, to be honest. Like, if someone comes up and tells you, oh yeah, God, you're like, oh, what the fuck? But if you actually think about it in the grand scale of things, God is a lot more than just the word. Yeah, so it's just kind of like, before when we were thinking about like religion and just religions in general, it's just kind of those attachments to those labels and how their practices. Whereas now, when we think about God, when you actually started learning, you think about God in like more of a very vast space. Like God is like extensive. Like He's not just a label. Some people would describe Him as energy or spirit. Whereas if we were taught that when we were younger, instead of Christianity like being pushed down your throat, it would be totally different. It's exactly the same with me. Like my family is super duper religious. Like my mom got me a Bible for my birthday. That was like a what the fuck moment. Like, is this like a message? Do you think like I need saving or some shit? Like,
so much.
Yeah, like.
And to her, it was probably the best thing. Like, you're gonna love it so much.
Yeah, exactly. Her intention was pure, the most purest intention, but to me, it was just like a huge defense mechanism where I curled up and I was a little bit like angry and agitated. I was like, bro, what are you trying to say? Like overthinking. And you have these thoughts that are just coming out, just these thoughts that are in your brain, and you're over-analyzing the whole situation, and you're like pretty much worrying like, what is her perception of her son? You know what I mean? That was a huge moment for me. It was like, what is her perception of me? Is it like I'm going through some very dark path where she feels like the only way for me to save my son is to give him the Bible? Maybe this is the way. Yeah, this is the way we show him the light. I was just like, damn. Yeah, I'm grateful for it. Like it's like it showed me a lot, taught me a lot about myself. But I'm not gonna lie, I've never read that Bible.
Yeah. Sorry, Mom. I never read that Bible. That's I think that's why I love so much, the metaphor of if you get someone that's a hyper-realist painter, right, and they paint a painting of the moon, it's still, you can teach a kid, oh, this is the moon, this is what the moon looks like, but it's still just a painting of the moon. It's not the moon itself, and I find that we do that a lot, not just in religion, but with everything. We take a word and we take it that is it, that God is, that is it, rather than it being so much more, vast than what the word or the meaning can at all fit. It's like trying to fit the ocean in a cup.
Yeah,
trying to deliver the potency and the beauty of the moon or of love in like a description or in a painting versus the experience of it, the experience of God or the experience of love. Or even the experience of riding a bike, like writing in a book, stage by stage, this is how you ride a bike. And, you can think of the shock of a kid if that's the only way he ever learned to ride a bike, and then he actually got on a bike 10 years later and he's just like, this is not, what? It's totally different to it. It's exactly what you said it was logically, but the experience is totally different, And yeah, it's been a journey, like having to be very honest with myself, and I was like, damn, like I've got a lot of blocks and barriers that stop me connecting with my mum, because every time she names the word God, like I think that's it, that's the finite thing of it. Oh, it's a man, it's a person, and there are a lot of people that feel that way, and I'm fine with that. But for me, as soon as I realize that the way we say something or the way we point to it, it's like pointing to a painting. We can only point and allure ourselves, refer to the thing that it is. We can't actually, you know what I mean? We can't actually say it and encompass it. It's impossible. You can't put the ocean in a cup. You can't.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
It's a part of it, but it's not enough.
How has your concept of the greater reality, the spiritual world, and God like evolved over time to where it is now? Or is it still sort of unfolding, or is that making you uncomfortable?
Yeah, no, It for me. Probably one of the most life-changing experiences that I've had. I've had 3. That sounds really specific, but on the experience of what they call so in Japan they have 2 different words. There's one satori and kensho. Have you guys have heard that before?
Satori,
Yeah. So satori.
Satoshi.
Yes. So satori can refer to enlightenment through like surprise, or like it just lands on you out of nowhere. It's not even that you were seeking it. It's not even that you meditated for just enough time and the thing you were seeking you finally got. It literally lands on you. And then kensho is when it lands on you through suffering. Almost like when you are on your knees, so humble, finally accepting the fact that maybe you're not in control, you're feeling depressed, you're out of control of your life, and you very authentically give up the pursuit of the thing you've been pursuing for so long. And in that humble moment, kensho will send itself onto you, and you'll have an experience of enlightenment. And so for me, that happened to me in both of those. The satori, I was literally I was working at Good Life. I remember driving to Good Life, and I remember thinking something really random, and I just thought, because I'd always hear the concept that you are everything, and I remember just thinking, man, and I'm driving my car, and I'm like, man, imagine if I'm like driving inside myself right now. It's like, if everything is me, imagine I'm like driving through myself. And I was thinking really mess up stuff like, the road is like my intestines, and like this is like the walls and the trees. And it was really weird. And then all of a sudden it was like this moment of, I was me. Rather than me in a car driving on a road to work, I was me in a me, driving on a me to me.
Yeah.
I was everywhere, and I was crying. Like I remember having these tears streaming down my face. Like couldn't even control it. And I wasn't even like crying. These tears of joy, because I felt, not even I felt. There was no me to feel. I was just everything. Like I couldn't even. I remember seeing the Westfield sign at Carousel and being like, oh, like it was just like beautiful, and everything was so beautiful, and the lights turning from red to green was so beautiful, and it was so. And again, it wasn't like I was consciously pondering something to have that experience. It just landed on me, and then the other time was I was listening. I was meditating in the backyard, and I was listening. I was outside, sitting on the grass, and I had my eyes closed, and there was this breeze. And I was listening to the birds and just kind of doing a technique of just listening to sounds, expanding the awareness a little bit further out. So 1 meter, 5 meters, the next suburb, the next city. And I remember hearing everything in my garden. And I had this experience of I was listening to a bird in a tree over there. And I remember sitting there, and I remember feeling I have no perception of over there. That if I heard a thought in my head, it is happening here. And the sound of that bird chirping is also happening here. I'm not hearing it over there. I'm hearing it here. And then the breeze, I'm not feeling it from over there. I'm feeling it here. And anything that I would hear, I wasn't hearing it where it was. I was hearing it in this one space. So it's almost like my skin dissolved. And the space that separated inside me, thoughts, emotions, and outside me, content, world, trees, birds, dropped like in a second. And there was just space. And it was that same experience of everything was me. And I was having this moment of I could be all the way over in the savannah, or I could be over in Antarctica. I could just be in my garden. I was the breeze, and I was the bird, and I almost was space. Not just space here, but space that was in the whole universe, and everything was happening inside of me. So after I was having some of those experiences, how that has changed my perception of God and the universe and consciousness is that beyond my separate sense of self is, and I could probably just leave it at that, like beyond my sense of separateness is everything else as well as me.
Yeah.
So the most potent things for me have been when I've experienced this any sense of self, any self-image, any past, any future, any name, age, anything that defined me as being separate to someone else or even a tree. When that fell through, I experienced the most, if you want to call it love, the most oneness, the most unifying. And those experiences have changed my life for always, yeah. And so that's how my interpretation of God has changed, yeah.
Wow.
It's like an isness, yeah. It's an isness, yeah.
Have you ever tried describing this to your mom or parents?
My dad would have been the best person. My mum, I don't know. I feel like when I go to have a conversation with my mum about something, she's very clear at the beginning. She's like, I know you call it universe and I call it God, but that's because we're different and I know that's okay and stuff. But sometimes when she pre-frames it like that, makes me hold back because I just feel like it's not necessary. It's cool. Like I don't feel like we need to have that. And I find that my dad probably would be the best because my dad was a musician, all the drugs you can think of, like atheist. So my mum wanted to get me like baptized when I was born. My dad.
How did they meet?
Like,
Yeah.
My dad.
Total opposites.
My dad toured over to Australia with the Stones actually in '73.
Rolling
Stones.
Stones.
So he was a supporting band.
Damn.
Yeah, in the '73 at the Wacker, and then
That would be insane lifestyle.
yeah.
I like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. It's actually on YouTube. If you go on YouTube, it's got no audio or anything, and you see Mick Jagger there, like after my dad plays. It's so funny. My dad, not Mick Jagger, he's amazing. My dad's funny. And then my dad did like a couple gigs around Perth, and then my mum was waitressing at one of the clubs, and they met there when he was performing, and then and then that was it from there. Yeah. So my dad was very had like LSD, like they would create these massive like joints called like a Jeffrey. You've probably heard of it before. Yeah. It's got everything in it. And so he's all of those things. So my dad always was very open-minded. But the paradox of that is that he's actually got dementia now. And he's had dementia my whole life, dementia and delirium and psychosis my whole life, and I never knew. And he's completely incapacitated now. Like he can't hold a conversation. He can't like nothing. And so it's really interesting, that kind of really sad, but paradox that is there. That I felt that the one that I could talk about this most with was having all this stuff going on, and then my mum, who's very, very alert, very intelligent, very present, can have coherent conversations. I found myself withdrawn a little bit. So my dad would be the best person, but he wasn't like intellectually and cognitively able to retain that information, because there was delirium, paranoia. He was very stuck in the land of separation. Us, them, us and the government. And that's what happens in when you've got paranoia and delirium and dementia. They can go in like a bundle. So to answer your question, I haven't spoke about it in length with my mum. I think I could. I've talked to her a lot about my plant medicine journeys, because I'm low key like, please do mushrooms with me.
Do you reckon she will?
I reckon she would.
That'll be a very big breakthrough
for her.
And I just this is just this where we can't. There's no arguing over this is God or that is. I was like, you can call that God. I'm going to call it mushrooms. You can call it mushrooms. Like it is what it is. Like, but it's that experience, right? That she's not had before. And my dad had, I feel like that so much of that opened him up. I mean, it probably messed him up as well. It was more like the cocaine, weed every day and things like that. But the plant medicine, the experience he told me he's had on LSD and psilocybin is amazing. My mum has, as far as I'm concerned, she has had mushrooms before, but environment is everything. And she's touring around with a musician. Like, it's not the same. So I would love for her to have that. And maybe during that experience, I would share with her those experiences that I've had, because I would also be in a position to be a bit more open to share, because I've got to take responsibility for my balls up too. So,
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that space is very hard to like navigate with your parents at least. Yeah, because I think my mom is pretty religious, super Christian as well, and there's like some things that you want to mention to I would like to mention to her, however, because she's very super duper religious, and I do understand. For me, it was more like the some things I wouldn't venture into because it brings pure hope for her. Like, it's a very hopeful journey for her. Otherwise, at least, considering everything that's going on right now, I think that's one of the most important things to probably have is hope. Because if you don't have that, what else do you really have? You know what I mean?
That's beautiful.
And I think in our family, we didn't really have access to certain. We probably have had access to it, but because it was just so ingrained in our generation, it's venturing into like alternative forms of medicine or alternative forms of thought, or breaking out of that religious mode. It's very difficult, and my grandma is exactly the same. So for me, like, doing that is something that I really want to do, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, what if it withers that hope for her? Even as beautiful as it is, like, you know, you realize, you growing to experience God in a greater understanding. It's greater understanding, or just experiencing God in a different way, because I feel like when you look at God as some omnipotent being who sits in a chair, it kind of separates you from God. So you're thinking that you're separate from God, and you will never truly be able to reach that level of purity, the level of light, and that level of love, because you're separate from Him. So you're beneath Him, and I kind of believe that God gave you a piece of Him, so you are technically a piece of the universe, piece of God. So you're not really separate from Him. You're an evolving version of Him. But once we put that glass door, we put that boundary between yourself and God, you're keeping yourself from truly experiencing it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's why I struggle with Christianity quite a lot, when they say like, or your man is fallen, man is perpetually a sinner, man is dark, all these things, like, and you're just some filth being, essentially. That's what they label it as. Well, even my stepdad does it when he talks about it. He's always just like, no, man is fallen, there's sinners, there's this and this and this, and it's like, whoa, man, like, just calm down. I don't think that at all. Like, I honestly think that everything around us is energy, like our world, our bodies, but we are consciousness and God is consciousness. So it's all just one at the end of the day.
I love that. I had a really interesting, and again, it's funny because it is, but I'm not meaning any kind of offense to Jehovah's Witnesses, but I had a Jehovah's Witness that came to my door, right?
Okay.
And usually I'm like, whoa, like I won't say like anything. I'll just be like, no, thank you, and whatever. And I remember I was like, you know what? I've got some questions. You know.
It's that wrong house, motherfucker.
So funny. And I opened the door, right? And I opened the door, and I'm just like, hey, you know, and he's, you know, saying, and it was the same one as what I had when I was living down the hill, and the first thing they said was, do you believe in a world of no suffering? And I was like, well, it depends what you mean. And then, like, they've given me like a powerful, you always feel sorry for this guy already, So, and he was a really nice guy, and I was just like, you know, he looks great and stuff, and I was like, he's come to my house, he's been called here, so I was like, okay. So, okay, and then I'm genuinely, like, I love, sidetrack, me for questions. I love questions. Questions are just, because it makes you look for the answer.
Yeah.
And quite often I found the best questions, there isn't an answer for them. You know, what is God? You know, again, you're very limited to what you could say, even though your definition before was amazing. It's very limited to what you can say. And also when it comes to things like beliefs, okay, well, what, you know, like, yeah, you really believe that this class of people is better than you? Okay, why? And even things like why? You end up running out. If it doesn't come from the core of your being, it ends up, okay, well, well, this thing happened to me, and you end up getting to the core of where that came from. So anyway, I love questions. So I was asking, okay, so yeah, well, without suffering, I was like, okay, well, it depends what you mean. And they were like, oh, well, no suffering, because soon Jesus is going to descend down, or God is going to descend down and get rid of all the sinners and all of the bad people and everything in the world, and there will be no suffering. And I was like, oh, So they're speaking to someone, me, who was vegan for 4 years and vegetarian for 4 years. And I was like, okay, so like suffering. So you mean like physical suffering, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. But what about, I was like, but lions eat, what about the lambs and stuff, or gazelles? I said, gazelles are still going to be suffering, right? Because lions are still going to be getting gazelles. And, we can't deny suffering. Pain is a type of suffering, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, what kind of suffering are we talking about? All suffering. I was like, okay. So gazelles, they're not going to suffer anymore. I was like, really? A gazelle's not going to suffer anymore? They were like, no. And I was like, dang, how? And they were like, whoa, the lions won't kill them. And I was like, wow. So won't the lions suffer? And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, what are lions going to eat? And I was like, well, they were like, well, they'll eat grass. I was like, pretty sure they can't eat grass, mate. I'm pretty sure that's suffering. And they're like, oh, well, God will figure something out where everyone can live in peace and all the sinners will be gone. And I was like, oh, sinners. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, because, when God created Adam and Eve, and he created Adam in his isness, and he created Eve, and when he created the tree of the fruit, right? And he told Eve not to eat from the tree. And when she ate from the tree, and she committed that sin, and that's what produced sinners, right? I was like, okay, hold up, back up. I was like, okay, so God created Adam and Eve, right? And you're telling me that Eve chose to eat from the tree, even though God told her not to. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And you're telling me that sinners that are going to be gotten rid of are people that choose to rape, people that choose to cause abuse, people that choose to cause things that are not God's will, right? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay. And they only started doing that after Eve ate the fruit. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So if God created them in his likeness, Eve chose to eat from the tree. So wasn't she sinning before she ate from the tree? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, God gave her the choice. She was able to make the choice, right? And I was like, he told her not to. And I was like, he told her not to, but she had the choice to eat from the fruit. So the ability to commit sin was inherent in her before her eating the fruit from the tree spread sin everywhere. And I was like, so really, God created them in his likeness and said, don't eat from the tree, but she still chose to eat from the tree.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like, so when did the sin actually start? Because it started before she ate from the tree, because she was already sinning before that. And he was like, well, and I was like, well, it must have started from God then when he made them.
And that's true.
That's true, damn.
In Isaiah 45.
And he was like, this is what he said. So I'm actually not sure about the answer of that. I'll have to go back and talk to my minister, and I'll be back next week.
He's going to be riding his bike.
Never saw him ever again. That's where it stopped. And I was just asking questions like, what do you mean suffering? What do you mean? And he couldn't give an answer. And so yeah, for me, I was just like, okay, cool. So you answered my questions, but then you couldn't. So for me, your knowledge there has like ran out. This has come from elsewhere. This hasn't come from you as a core belief. No one can tell me. When it comes to animal welfare, animal abuse, like there's just this part in me where that is like ride or die. Like that will never, ever, never change for me.
Yeah.
And it's not because someone told me. It's just this feeling when I see and feel an animal getting that injustice, that hurt or torture. There's just something within me that it pains me so much. And you can ask me as many questions as you want into that, and I'll never be able to budge with that. And I think that questions are really helpful in getting you to know what are my beliefs and what are not my beliefs. Like, where do my beliefs come from? And then it's really interesting because then you're like, oh shit, the things I thought I believed in maybe from day dot, I maybe haven't always believed for that long. If you're open to that kind of that inquiry into yourself, And I think me personally, I struggle a lot when it comes to Sadhguru and Alan Watts and Muji and the Eastern philosophers. But this is why I love them so much, is that when we talk about everything as oneness, right, and those experiences that I had with everything as oneness, I can tap into that experience of knowing that I am the dog that is being abused by the Chinese butcher for like the Yulin dog eating festival that happens every year. I can tap into that and I can see myself as the dog, and I can see myself as the person committing the abuse. And I can also look into, okay, people commit these, hurt people, right? And I read into it. I was like, why would people do that? And I read how expensive livestock is in China and the conditions that they're living in. When you've got a festival every year where you could steal meat from another person's yard and make money off of it to feed your family, people will do that. Do you know what I mean? They're stealing literally dogs. Like, you'll be holding your dog's leash outside a shop. They'll go by on bikes and they'll grab the leash and they'll drag and they'll take the dogs. They'll set up bear traps, like everything.
Oh, damn. That's crazy.
Yeah. The way that they do the dogs, I think, just not that, sorry. The Yulin trade, it happens every June in China. It's horrific. Yeah, it's horrific because it's not even humane the way that they do things. So there's a part of me that would really struggle, because at one point I was like, no, I need to get rid of anywhere that I'm seeing separation or rage for someone else, and where I stop is always at animal welfare.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can't get rid of that, and at one stage I don't feel like I have to. Like, there's enough space within me to acknowledge that everything is one, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sit by life passively. For some reason in this life I've been imbued with like overwhelming sensitivity to the abuse of animals, and I have enough space to, if I was ever in China and I saw that, I can have love for both beings, but very firmly and assertively stand up for what I feel is just and right in this sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been something that's been a challenge for me, is looking at what beliefs I still have space for in my,
There's definitely a lot of darkness in the world that you can see.
Yeah.
And obviously things that just violate universal law, like animal cruelty is one of them. Like, I remember the Japanese were doing this thing every year with the dolphins, where they would just like massacre the dolphins and round them up. And I'm just like, what the fuck are they doing?
Oh, really?
Sometimes they don't even keep them; they just leave them dead in the water. It's like a sporting event.
Why?
I have no idea. I'm nothing against like any country, but this is what's happening over there, and that just makes me repulsed. Like that's just a complete and utter. It's evil. It's evil for no reason whatsoever, and they call it sport. But this is done all over the world. But that feeling of rage or whatever it may be that you're getting there, it's just like, that's completely natural. That shouldn't need to be rid of. What needs to get rid of is that activity. And people like us that feel that way should obviously take steps towards it. Whatever we can to raise the awareness to remove those things, which is very difficult to do. Like, how do you start cleaning up the entire planet from everything? It seems like a monumental task.
Yeah.
But then you realize there's more people like us who are waking up and becoming more aware, and as you said, I think it was like, as you let our light shine, other people's light shines as well, and that's bringing in that balance, so to speak. But I take a lot of pride doing it in the spiritual work, bringing in the light, bringing in the awareness, because the only problem that really exists is the problem of the mind, the problem of the heart. Like, people aren't feeling, they're not thinking, and that's where all this darkness comes from, this complete ignorance. Like, I'm sure if that person knew, who was taking the dog to the market, if he could have the experience of feeling what the dog would feel, he wouldn't do that.
If it was his child.
100%. Yeah.
And that sounds grim, but like it is what it is. It's. I remember, and this is off topic, but not. I was in Woolworths car park the other day, and I don't know what it was. I love these moments, but I don't consciously create them. I saw lots of people in tradie uniform, and some mums with kids, and I was in the car park. I was walking back through the car park, and all of a sudden, I just had the thought, imagine if I looked at everyone as their inner child. And then all of a sudden I saw this little tradie, and he was like 5-year-old tradie with his little lunchbox and walking with his little lunchbox. And I saw like a mum with her child, and they were both children. They were like holding hands, and one was opening the boot and putting the shopping in. And I was seeing like this old man, and it was like a kid with a walking stick. And I saw them all as their inner child, and I was like, man, there are some things that we would say to adults when they would offend us or things like that we wouldn't say to a child. And I think, okay, well, why? In whichever space of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, when it comes to, when I said, imagine if that was his child, there's just that lack of compassion, right? And I totally understand. From my perspective, I have no problem with the cycle of life.
Yeah.
Things have to die. Trees have to shed their leaves, and we have to die as well. My problem isn't things dying. My problem is some beings exerting power over others, and where there is torture and suffering involved that is inflicted for the benefit of one and the demise for the other. You know what I mean? That's when I have a problem. No, cycle of life, I have no problem. Grass-fed meat, kangaroo, I have no problem eating that. But when it comes to the way that the agriculture and everything, the dairy industry, that everything is treated, it's a whole different ballpark.
It is, yeah.
It's a whole different ballpark. You
Just
know?
seeing like the little cages the cow lives in, that just eats like a bucket of like GMO corn or whatever, and a machine that milks it, like impregnates it, and just you can't even fathom like.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, how
it's-
some of the farms are really just like.
They do,
no words.
like the chickens, the chickens, they cut their beaks off, and that's where all the nerve endings are, right? So they cut their beaks off because they're in such close proximity, they attack each other because they don't have any room. So they literally will slice their beaks off with a grinder, no anesthetic, no nothing,
Yeah.
for their gain, because I don't want you to attack the other chickens because we've got to sell them for meat, you know. And the awful things like cows being pregnant, like they're pregnant every time they have a baby, they will impregnate them straight away again, like their like legs are almost breaking because they're constantly holding that weight. Even though I walked into a makeup store the other day, and it broke my heart because I'm not someone that's very I don't buy makeup all the time. I'm not someone that tends to go shopping all the time. But I went in, I was like, okay, it's actually just after I split from my relationship last year. I've got to get some makeup now.
Yeah.
And I went into Mecca, which is one of the biggest stores. It has every beauty brand in there you thought, right? She looked at my skin tone. What kind of thing do you want? I was like, something light. Don't want it cakey. And she brought back these products. And I was like, oh, I forgot to say, can it be cruelty-free? Not test on animals. And she was like, oh. And I was like, is that okay? She was like, yeah, I'm just going to have to look around. How hard it was. She brought me back 5% of what she had, what she could have brought me.
Damn,
It was so hard for her to find cruelty-free makeup. And if it was cruelty-free, it might not have been vegan. So this is the thing. If it's vegan, it doesn't mean it's cruelty-free. So if something's vegan with makeup, it has no animal product in it. But they can still test that on animals to death. And when they test on animals, they don't test to see if there's a skin reaction. They'll keep testing the chemical that is being tested until they die to know what the lethal dose is. They do it beagles. They do it with beagles. They put smoking with cigarettes. They put cigarette at one end. They'll have a tube and a cone strapped over their head, and they will have that beagle continuously smoking cigarettes until death to know what the lethal dose is. Body moisturizer, shower gel, hair products, everything, and no one shows that on the fucking bottle. Can you believe that we're in a society right now where you have to say that something is cruelty-free? It should be the other way around. If it's testing on animals until death, it should have that on there. Yeah. Because now it's this big thing. Oh, cruelty-free. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Vegan. Cruelty-free. It's happening. Not even in Asia anymore. It's happening here in Australia. There are puppy farms everywhere. These beagle puppy farms, for lab testing. They're having these babies, and because they never come and feed them or anything, these bloody beagles are being trapped in these metal cages, and there's thousands of them in there. Their hearing is so good that some of them go deaf. Their eardrums will burst because of how loud the constant noise is. They have puppies where they've given birth, puppies that are just lying dead with their guts open in the thing and all. Can you imagine how traumatizing that is for an animal, and being kept in that cage and then being tested on and for your life. Okay. We're doing that for makeup. For makeup.
And it's almost crazy, I think nowadays it's almost a deliberate choice to do that. There's plenty of ways not to do that. Some of these corporations are just blatantly evil.
That's it.
When it comes down to it.
And that's the thing when you've got a company, right? Oh, that's the thing Alan Watts talks a lot about. Companies don't exist. Who is a company? It's like the moon and the real moon, right?
Yeah.
Who is a company? Who do you end up blaming that on? Oh, the CEO. They're all fragments of this big thing that we call a company. And then when you actually go to get anyone to take responsibility for anything, no one will step up. Well,
even the pharmaceutical companies have these shadow companies and umbrella companies and trusts and stuff so that they can close one down and keep going.
Yeah, same as banks.
How many times has Pfizer and stuff been sued and they just closed down a corporation or closed down this, but it's only 1/100th of and no one gets blamed for it.
Yeah. That's it.
HSBC laundering money for drug cartels. They got caught $1 billion fine or something like that. They
Okay.
make
Yeah, a couple.
4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
20 times that. It's nothing.
It was a couple billion,
one's
but
held
even
liable.
then,
Yeah.
it was still running. No one gets
Lot
tried
of-
for it. Yeah.
It's a phantom company, right? Who is it that got fined? HSBC doesn't fucking exist.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
a group. It's like a religion for a group of people. If Christianity gets fined,
Yeah.
you know, and just as like a you know reference to make it a little bit more understandable, like it doesn't exist. It's a
Yeah.
following.
Yeah.
People follow and work for HSBC. If that lab, the Beagle lab, gets shut down, whose fault is it? Is it the injector's fault? Yeah, they definitely know what they're fucking doing. Oh, but I'm just doing my job because so and so hired me. Well, that's just the payroll person. They just hired you.
Yeah.
They know what you're doing, but still, that has because that. And you can go all the way up to the chain of command, and it ends up going so far up that they can say, "I'm so far up, I didn't know any of that was happening."
Yeah, that happens
Yeah,
all the time.
that happens, yeah,
The only
yeah.
Which
time
is
I've
the
ever
biggest load
seen-
of wank.
It is. It's bullshit. The only one time I've seen people be held liable was the Nuremberg trials after World War II. That was the only time where people said no, following orders, anything like that, you're all accountable, and they hung them. But I don't agree with killing, so I'd agree with maybe some kind of, I don't know.
Counselling.
Yeah.
I don't know, like
You're Batman,
I
right?
but there's something, you know, let them be held liable, and they can't hide behind corporations or masks or people or orders, because everyone's a sovereign being. You make a decision, even if it's an order or not, because authority is just an illusion, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
In general, authority is an
Yeah.
illusion. We're all equal under the guise, not under the universe. I don't say God, but
Yeah.
Yeah, the whatever. The whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this full circle now.
Yeah.
How did all of this start for you? Getting into this workshop, into this sort of spiritual space, if I can use that word.
For me, yeah, like always in like, be careful. No, I'm just kidding. So for me, again, like you can always only have an idea when something started. It's like you say, when did you and your partner, when did it all start? But it might have started way before
yeah.
you, and this friend invited you to that party, and it was 10 parties later, and all the meetings that things actually happened, all the things that had to happen before that.
4 lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, all this like from the beginning, from the Big Bang. That's Stardust, and that's Stardust. So when I was 19, my parents decided to separate, and it was one of those relationships that should have always been never.
Yeah.
They never should have been, and that was really difficult for me as a child. I was an only child, and I just remember.
You're a miracle baby.
I'm a miracle baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she couldn't have another one after that. So perfect, didn't need another one. Or maybe she fucked up the first time and she didn't want another one.
That's a bit dark.
Yeah. But hey, dark and light, it goes together, you know. It's both. So yeah, my parents divorced, and it's what I always wanted. I always wanted that because I couldn't stand living in the household that was in there. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, my life is gonna be so much better now. Like I can go see my dad separately, I can be with my mum separately, and there were a lot of things leading up to that were very difficult because my dad was getting more and more neurotic, and I didn't even know that he was sick, and it got to a point where he didn't want to let me eat, and he was like really just not in a good way. And but I'd had that all my life, so I didn't think there was anything. I just thought I was a bit crazy because I didn't have siblings to be like, yo, Mum's a dickhead. Like,
He didn't want you to eat, is that right? Or
Yeah.
you didn't want to eat?
no, he didn't want me to eat.
At all?
Why?
Yeah. It just really, and again, he had his own shit in there, so I would be like cooking eggs. Oh, what are you cooking eggs for? I was like, it's 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I'm making breakfast. I bought those eggs for dinner. I was like, there's 12 in there. He's like, yeah, but I wanted you like make a big frittata. And I was like, oh, fuck, all right then. So I had my eggs and whatever, and I'd be making lunch the next day. What are you making? Like, oh, Dad, I'm making soup. Are you using the cans of tomatoes? It's like, yeah, Dad. Oh, well, I was going to get them for dinner. I was like, Dad, you know what? So then I went and got my own cans of tomatoes. All right, I was making something with them the next day. What are you making lunch for? And I was like, cans of tomatoes. I bought these cans of tomatoes. These are my cans of tomatoes.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but the heat from the oven is so hot in here. I don't want you using the oven. I don't want you using the stovetop. It's too hot. It's too hot. And then so I was like, so I get something out the fridge that I bought out the fridge. What are you eating that for? I was like, Dad, I'm about, like, what is your problem? And I'm like, I don't understand. And he's like, oh, I'm just worried for you. You're eating a lot, you know. And I was like, wanted to compete in bodybuilding at that stage in IFBB. So I was like, I was like doing my chicken and my broccoli, and it was at the fridge. It was a pre-made meal that I made it, I bought.
Yeah.
And then he was like, yeah, no, I'm worried about you. You're spending a lot of money on food. So I could never get to the end of it. Anyway, he was neurotic. There was no end to it. So anyway, I was like, I cannot wait for this to be over. And there were some really dark things that happened before the divorce that actually led to that. And then when it actually happened, that was from my influence. I told my mum something that my dad said to me 5 years prior. That was very damaging, and when she found out about that, she like confronted my dad about it, and then they split in that moment. And what happened is eventually my dad moved out, and then I was just felt like so deeply like this heaviness, like this depression, and I was like, I thought this was going to get better, and I couldn't figure out what it was, because my entire life I thought my dad was like the bad guy. Like I felt the dad, like I was like, as soon as my dad's gone, like, you know, because I always had, my mum would say, your dads are this, your dads are that to me, and my dad would say, your mums are this, your mums are that to me. So I was always in the middle of this. Okay, that's a bad person, that's a bad person. And then when my dad left, I went to a psychologist, and my mum said, you know, you need to go talk about your dad to, you know, like get fixed sort of things. He messed you up. And I was like, yeah, man, he did mess me up. And I sit down in the psychologist chair, and I got diagnosed with severe depression and clinical anxiety. And then I sat down in this chair, and then we talked about my dad for like a few minutes, and then we talked about my mum. And I was like, what are we talking about my mum for? And then I got home. My mum was like, so sweetie, like how was the psychologist? And I was like, yeah, we only talked about dad for a couple of minutes, and we were actually talking about like me and you and stuff. And then from there, I don't know what happened, but my mum like withdrew all support for me getting mental health help.
Oh, damn.
And then that was really difficult for me. Again, that is only perceptively what I think that it was, because I was hugely anxious and depressed before that.
Yeah.
And I remember then, like a lot of arguments, she might say she didn't say it, and that's fine, because people remember reality differently. But from my recollection, whenever we would have an argument, it would be, yeah, go run along, tell your psychologist about what I said and talk shit about me. And then she'd say, don't listen to psychologists, like they're crazy, don't listen to them. And so they ended up being this like, I didn't know, I thought I was going to be happy because my dad was gone. Then I'm realizing maybe the problem was my mum. And then I'm like, oh my God, have I been manipulated all my life? And then I'm like, I don't know what thoughts are mine. And then I don't want to go to a psychologist because she's talking about my mum. And if I'm going to save mine and my mum's relationship, I've got to stop looking into how that might be a problem. And then it was just fucked. Like it was absolutely fucked.
Damn.
So what was really happening is all my trauma from my childhood was coming up. Because that split caused almost like a misfiring in my way of operating.
Yeah.
And I was realizing, and I was like, oh shit, like I got some major parent issues, and I was like realizing all the toxic stuff that was happening. But because I was always dealt with passive aggressiveness, like my mum dealt with passive aggressiveness, my dad just wouldn't say anything at all. So I was always taught, if you express yourself, you're going to be withdrawn from love, and they'll be ignoring me for like a couple days or like hours. And I learned very, very quickly not to express myself. But I'm a very sensitive person, so I had a lot of rage and sensitivity. So then I had all this coming up, and I literally, my ego was like, don't talk to anyone, I don't want to do anything. I couldn't do anything but be in my room, because I felt so threatened by everything outside. I didn't know how to deal. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it because I think I was crazy. The only one that knew was my partner at the time. And we were together for 7 years after that, and he supported me so much. And I remember seeing him meditating. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm meditating." And I was just like, "You're not a monk. You didn't meditate." Like, "Oh, it's gay, you know. Oh, it's gay." And I'm like, "Oh, fucking meditate is gay." Like, what? And then he listened to like Tribe Called Quest. A lot, like love Tribe Called Quest, like Joey, Badass, like so many different groups that would weave in like lyrics and raps about enlightenment and about community and about just oneness. And I remember, I think it was Tribe Called Quest that brought up the Bhagavad Gita in one of their songs, I think. And Kale started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and he was telling me to read it, and he was on this whole thing, and I was just like, yo, like I'm in the deep of my depression. I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Like, what do you mean meditation and stuff? And then he knew I love cartoons. So when he saw one day, he's like, hey baby, there's this series on YouTube. It's a cartoon, and it's called Spirit Science. And it's a cartoon, and he keeps saying it's a cartoon. And it's Spirit Science, and it's a cartoon, and it's a series. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And I was watching the first episode, and I was like, this is amazing. I love cartoons. And I literally binge watched that series over the 4 days. Like I stayed in my room and I binge watched that series.
Spirit science is dope.
It's dope.
Man,
yeah.
it changed my life. Changed my life. And after that, I didn't know what the fuck I just learned. So I was like, I'm not my thoughts. There's energy, and there's chakras, and there's consciousness, and there's the Lemurians. And now I was like, oh my God. And I was like searching, and then I was like obsessed. And after that, I typed into Google, and I was like, spirit science similar. Because I didn't know what the fuck I just learned. I didn't know it was spirituality. I didn't know it was, I'd never come across this before. It's not religion. And I was like, oh my God. And then what came up was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
And that's just where it all kicked. That's where it went from there. Yeah, just...
You know, I always thought it was Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart
For
Tolle.
so long. It's not
I
like
don't
Tolle.
know.
I'm like, Tolle? I'm like, no, I swear.
I just
Eckhart Tolle.
want to hear, I just sometimes want to hear him say it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I
Yeah.
never do. You know what
I
I mean?
thought
It's
I
always
changed the mention,
Oprah or
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, man.
He was on Oprah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But I didn't hear her say it. I didn't
Yeah.
hear him say it. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
that
Like
is
when I
true.
hear him say, I think, hello. Like, I want to hear him say it. Like, I just want your name.
Because I heard Ryan say
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle. I'm like, no, that's wrong. It's
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Tolle, Tolle.
Tolle,
Like,
yeah.
oh man, that amazing human being.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's where it all went for me, and I was just so excited about I am not my mind, and I am not this. Like, I had such power and liberation from that, and it didn't get easier from there. But I accessed this life source because I acknowledged this content of my mind and then me, especially when I read The Power of Now and talking about, you know, when you get triggered, it's the pain body.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like a different person because you are a different person. It's your
Yeah.
5-year-old self, or it's, you know, you quite literally are inhabiting the content of a different person. And I was just like, oh, well, who am I then? And I started asking all these existential questions like, okay, well, if that's what the pain body comes up, then what's there before, in the background, and after the pain body? You know, so I'm like, well, who am I then if I'm not the depression and if I'm not this? And I start asking these self-inquiry, and I very, very quickly went into Eastern philosophy, learning like from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, which wrote I Am That, which is almost like, do not read it before bed. It's like,
Oh,
it's
sorry,
like,
let me write that down.
I
What
am
is it?
that.
I am that.
Easily the thickness of the Bible. Easily.
Oh, shit, okay.
And what I love about a lot of Eastern philosophy is they do a lot of their teachings in dialogue form.
Yeah.
So they'll have, Eckhart actually does that too, right? So he'll have the audience will ask a question, and then he'll respond to the question,
Yeah.
and it's like a dialogue. So you have people asking questions that you're thinking, and then they're responding back to that. So this is what the book is. It's question Maharaj, and they're in this dialogue. And the guy's, well, I don't get that. And does that mean you're just passive? And he's just like slaying this guy, like, you know, cutting him out his own question, clarifying his own question. It's just, so I think after that, then I got into PT wasn't enough for me anymore. Like I was like, I can't even like explain it. I was just like, you know, I sought for so long with my own self-image issues to have a six-pack and to have this and that, and I even had like this double jaw surgery. I had this massive double jaw surgery and chin and nose genioplasty. Like I had this massive $50,000 surgery done.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and even after that, you know, the epitome that I thought it would be when I just changed that thing that I'm accepted. Like I never got there, and I'm here training clients. And I think, and almost enabling them to think that when they get to the six-pack, or when they get to this, or when they get to that everything's going to be better for them. And it wasn't enough for me anymore. I was like, I need to get the groundwork, how I can take my amazing excitement for all of this that I've learned into a way that I can put it in coherent sentences, because I wasn't able to do that. So I became a life coach, and I did neuro-linguistic programming. I did my master's in neuro-linguistic programming. I did hypnosis, my master's in hypnosis, Reiki, and I'm a breathwork facilitator as well.
Wow.
So I just was learning these different modalities, not just to tick off in my passport to say I've done it or been there, but to try and see which tool and a method can really help me to articulate almost like what I went through and what is capable for other people.
Wow.
And it all started from the excitement of I'm not depression, like I'm not anxiety, because as soon as I was diagnosed with that, yeah, but I'm depressed. Yeah, but I'm anxious. I've
That
got
label's
anxiety.
powerful, hey?
Yeah, it's a great reason to stay in your room and do nothing. and to get away with all sorts of things, you know. So to not, and I wasn't ready to be told that I wasn't that, because that would take my right away to be shielding myself. And so Kale very cleverly did it in a way that he planted it in, you know what I mean? And that's
it's a
cartoon.
It's very
so yeah, there's a
strategic.
script. So it's a cartoon. I was like, oh my god. So yeah, that's where it all started, and it's still going, and the layers keep unfolding, and even more so when I discovered like plant medicine last year, and a lot this year. That's also been another tool that has helped me to again deliver in better words what people are capable of.
Yeah. What was your first experience like with plant medicine?
My first, I would say, like, I had a few experiences before it being actually a well thought out environment.
Yeah.
That makes sense. First one, we just went to a bush stove. We got
Yeah.
a few tabs of acid, 3 grams of DMT, went back to my friend's house, dropped acid, stayed up all night, did DMT in the morning through a bong, and then I went home like, what the fuck is life?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a nurturing environment.
Yeah.
But I have done medicine experiences since then. That have just been, so the most potent one has been the toad, which is...
Well, you did the toad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? How
Yeah.
did you find this
this
toad?
toad? Yeah.
Man. We're playing with an ocean in a cup right now. Like I'm trying to paint the moon, and I'm doing really shit job of it.
Like it turned Mike Tyson from like the aggressive monster to like the most zen dude ever.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like obviously researching it before I went in, and again, it still doesn't.
Was it in Australia that you did it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it still doesn't. Even what he says
says
about
it.
it, like now I listen, I'm like,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I've been to the moon.
Yeah.
So you're pretty good at articulating this kind of stuff. Like, what was the experience really like?
Okay, all right. So, in terms of the logistics of it, you fast for it.
Yeah.
You take it out through like a pipe, so it's toad venom. You have it through a pipe. You breathe it in. It will typically last 15-20 minutes, and that's it.
That's a long time.
50, for where you are, and it depends how open you are with how, it might be 5 minutes, but it depends how much you have and how open you are, because the body can just reject going next, you're not ready. So you fast for it, set intention, I was sitting outside on this mat, and I was, he administered the medicine, and he was like, okay, so you breathe, do your breath work, you breathe all the way out, till all the way your abs are contracting all the way out. And you have to breathe all the way in, and you're not allowed to stop. So you breathe, and it has to be like very, very, very soft. Within 4 seconds, I'm no longer breathing the toad; it's breathing me.
Okay.
I am, and the best way for me to describe in general is when I have other plant medicine experiences. Let's say I'll have mushrooms or LSD. Again, there's this whole I'm having kaleidoscopic visuals.
Oh, okay, yeah.
LSD, there's a tree over there. I'm having this. Even when I close my eyes, there's the me that's having the visuals. The difference with the toad is the one that is having the experience completely disappears.
So you're just the experience.
Yeah, but not just the experience. Like, you are the experience. Like, so... there was the me breathing in the toad, and then the me that was breathing in is gone. Like, no self, nothing. There's in the void of nothingness, there is everything, though.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, take it all in, and then I, just from what my people have told, you're literally not there. So from what I've been told, I was like, ooh, and I was like, because you're not there, all your shit's coming up. There's no barrier.
Yeah.
There's no, oh my God, what are the people thinking? There's not there. And I just remember go, ooh, and I lean forwards, and he very gently leans me back and opens my legs out. And I remember just, again, not good language, space-time totally doesn't exist. And again, whatever I saw, there was this white light that I was this white light. And again, there was nothing, it's really hard to explain, but I remember the first intention was, I want to release this block in my solar plexus that is stopping me from being the fullest expression of me. So very specific. It was a lot related to my work and my podcast and things like that. And we've talked about that before, allowing yourself to be your full creative genius, don't worry about judgment. And there's a lot of shame from my childhood. And I could always feel it here, and I just wanted that to go.
I get that as well. It's like zing every now and then.
Yeah, right? Because that's your center of self. Like your solar plexus is the sun. That's where you're meant to shine from. And I always feel it there. I can feel it here when I talk about it. And I set 2 intentions. And when you're in a ceremony, you could go as many times as you want with the toad. So I went twice, and it hit my intentions in order.
Wow.
So the first one, I remember going in, whatever that means, I disappeared, right? There was no one there. And I remember God, and I can use that word, God, universe, consciousness, said, or I said, there were words. I was the words. It was laughing at me because I said, again, my intention, how do I release this block from how can I be my authentic self? And it was laughing, saying, who is the self that you think you are going to be?
Oh, fuck.
And in that, I laughed from a place so deep and so expansive. I was rolling, laughing for 15 minutes, non-stop. I didn't stop. And like the laughter where you're kind of scared you're going to die, that you can't stop for 15 minutes.
Like when you're really high, I get that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, and what's happening is I'm like, like, I thought I was a someone, like, it's nothing, like, this, like, who did I think I was going to be? Like, who is the authentic self? Like, I'm like laughing and rolling. And as I'm rolling, this images, as fast as they come up, where I've had a block or an issue, feeling like, oh, I wish I could be more authentic, or I wish I could let go of that thing. As quick as it came up, it was let go through laughter. So the healing was happening not through tears or an anger release or like smashing something. It was happening through laughter, because the isness was undercutting the entire problem, which was, I was thinking that there was a self that had the problem of not being authentic. There was no self that problem could belong to anymore. And so where is the problem? If you're going to have a problem, it means there is someone to solve it.
Yeah.
There was no one to solve it. And so there was no problem. It was just an equation. It was just a bunch of words, a bunch of letters, a bunch of numbers. And I'm rolling and I'm laughing, and I can hear my partner Theo and the medicine man that administered it for me and the other participants, and they're like laughing. And I remember looked up, forgetting they were there or where I was, or that they'd even done the toad. I remember looking up at them, and I remember this quick thought came in my mind, this feeling of, how embarrassing. And then I was like, like again, laughing, rolling, laughing, because that thought didn't belong to anyone. So as soon as it came, it went, and I was like, I was laughing, like literally for 15 minutes. And then when I eventually came back, I remember opening my eyes and I looked up at the sky, and there were clouds going by, and it was the first audible words I said. I was like, where are they? And where are they? And then Theo was like, what, baby? Where's what? And I was like, the fox. Where have they gone? Where are they? And I remember just looking at the sky and feeling as close to the sky spatially as my own nose. And the trees in the forest, because I was in a forest, was as close to me as the hairs on my skin. And the savannah was as close to me as my hair on my head. And there was no space or separateness to anything. And there was just space. And so I came back and I'm feeling the rug and I'm rolling in the dirt. And there's no such thing as dirt and wet. And there's like dirt and grass and sensations. And yeah.
Wow. That sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah, and so each of us had that. The first guy that went, I wanted to go first exactly for this reason. He went first, And I didn't want to have any idea of what was going to happen.
Oh, true.
Oh,
And
true.
I'm looking
Okay,
at him and I'm
yeah.
like, and I usually want to go last for everything.
Yeah.
I went first and I wanted to go first. And as soon as he said, I'm going to go first, I was just like, and I'm looking at him and he has it and he goes back and he's like, puts his hands inside his mouth. He goes, and he pulls his teeth and he's like, I need to let go. And he's like pulling his skin and he's rolling. And he's like looking at us and he's rolling. And then after about 15 minutes, and his girlfriend was there, and she was getting quite concerned. She was like, should I support him? And we were like, no, like let him on his journey. And he gets up and he was like, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I was like, what? And then we didn't know until the second time, after he went 2 times, I went 2 times, and my partner and his girlfriend was just going. And I said, no, his partner had gone and Theo was going. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, man, so far you're the only one that said audible words in the middle of your trip. He was like, what do you mean? And I was like, when you said, I need to let go. He's like, what? I was like, bro, you put your hand in your mouth like this and you were like, I need to let go. He was like, stop fucking around. And I was like, no, legit. And he was like, that was not my experience. So like, he was so oneness with everything. That trauma that was coming up could just go because no one was there to claim it almost. It could just come up. I need to like he wasn't even the one saying that. Like it was this beautiful like, and what I saw was not what was happening for him. Like he was almost like not there. It wasn't dissociated. It was almost like he wasn't just his body. He was everything else. And he had this similar experience with the white light and it was the
amazing.
most and from there like my business took off, my like podcast took off, like these energetic blocks like abundance, worth, love, it was health, like these literal blocks are just there's no block to the energy anymore,
Wow. Yeah.
And it hasn't gotten rid of everything, like you're not enlightened, but it's and even for the second one, my 7-year relationship came up because that was my second intention. I was like, I want to let go of the past, and when I shared that intention in the circle at the beginning, I thought of him straight away. So we were together for 7 years, and he only left last year in November.
Yeah.
Long time.
So and it had only been 6 months at that point. And I just really wanted to let go so bad, and the second time he gave me half of the dose, and so I don't think I was completely gone, either that or I wasn't quite willing to let go. And so what happened, the second one was extremely difficult. That was very, very, like really, really difficult. Everyone cried, all the men, they all cried on the last one. Yeah. It was really hard. It was like the first one was the initiation, and the second one was like, the toad was like, hey, you're in, good job. So now, first task is to look at all your shit. And it really got all your shit. Like after all of us, we were all there like sobbing, and we all had to like hold each other, and so it's not like something that you just do recreationally. Like it's
Full on ceremony.
It's work, yeah.
You'll go there, it's work,
It's
it's
work,
work, and you've got to integrate it, and because I wasn't willing to go there to release my ex, like all this stuff was coming up, and I did have a big release, but what you don't finish, the cycle in the toad, it can revisit to make you finish the cycle. So not that night, but the next night, I'm about to fall asleep, right? I'm about to fall asleep, and you know that feeling when you feel like you're about to fall down?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm about to fall down, but as I'm about to fall down, I fall into the toad trip again.
Holy shit.
In my bed 2 nights later, and I go deep into the toad and everything, like I'm not there again. It's like God knocked on my door when I wasn't, and he just came in, like didn't even ask if I was ready.
Wow.
That's what a toad feels like. He's just like, motherfucker, this is my house too. And he just walks in, and I'm just like gone. And it was beautiful, and I had the most beautiful conclusion, and just the message that I got from that was just love, like just the deepest reverence and love was the message that I got from that. And a lot of times if I thought about my ex or I saw something, like 95% of what I felt before like wasn't there. My dreams changed. Like in my dreams it ended up being, in my dreams he wouldn't talk to me in my dreams because he left without saying anything. There was no conversation, there was nothing. And so that feeling of abandonment and that shock in my system was playing out in my dreams. He wouldn't talk to me in my dreams, I couldn't get him to talk to me. After the toad, I started asserting myself to him in my dream. He still wouldn't talk to me, but then I started talking to his girlfriend in my dream. And now in my dreams, as my dreams go, me and his girlfriend are like best mates.
Wow.
Right.
in my dreams. And before I was just like, like Dev, like fuck you have what I wanted, and now like in my dreams, like I go to her yoga classes in my dream. I don't even think she's a yoga instructor. So I don't know.
Damn, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so like really deep subconscious, like
So your whole dreams have changed since that.
yeah, I mean my dreams have always been messed up, but on that level in terms of my relationship, then my assertiveness and the way, and again it's coming from this place of love, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't this like, yeah, I realized that you didn't leave me, I chose for that to happen. It wasn't this like false bravado, like this false like I've moved on. It was very genuine, like hey, like in my dream, there's like no problem at all. That they're always in my dream together, and they're often in my dreams. Yeah.
Damn, that's powerful.
Yeah. So
That's super interesting.
that was the
yeah.
most experience. That was the most impactful experience that I've had on plant medicine, and then the other ones would just be when I would have microdosed mushrooms. Especially when I've had intimate, like, sexual experiences on microdosing mushrooms.
How much do you microdose? What's the dosage?
Probably a microdose would be between anything under a point, depending who you ask, a 0.3 or a 0.4, maybe more a 0.3.
Yeah.
Say a 0.3 and below would be a microdose. Between a 0.4 and 0.9 would be a mini dose.
Yeah.
And then, again, depending which mushrooms you have, usually a normal dose would be like between 2 to 4 grams.
Okay,
Like
cool.
for a full experience,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you should be having your blindfold on and internally, or definitely not going out anywhere or anything,
yeah.
but enjoying the experience. But yeah, I've really been exploring plant medicine and intimacy and with my partner, and it's quite literally that has been equally life-changing to the toad. Equally life-changing to the toad, yeah. Like I've never experienced anything like what Theo and I have experienced when we're being intimate, and both on mushrooms before, on microdose. Like it's like everyone should experience that.
Do you like become one
Yes.
being? Like
Yes.
spiritually merge? Is that?
Yeah, and it's like your energy, like the kind of orgasms that are happening are like, it's almost like every second. Think of that. Every second it's happening.
Wow.
Because it's energy, and there's no okay, we're doing this to reach a climax, or I wonder how I'm doing. And even if you don't think you're thinking that, a lot of the times in the background you are. Or am I good enough? Or I want them to do this better, or or if you're just thinking about your to-do list, or you're just not as present as you think you are. There's that sense of separation, right? And it took me to that unity, that no separation. When you've just got that positive and negative ends of the battery of the magnet, it's just a constant energy flow, like constant.
Yeah.
So you're not confined by the limitations of the body. Essentially, you're becoming more than just the body.
I think a lot of that goes into like tantra and Kundalini practices, because sexual energy is life force. It's creative energy. The energy that you take to do the podcast is sexual. When you do a painting, it's sexual. It's all the same thing. Like when a couple have a baby, they have sex, and that sexual intimacy is the creation of life. Right?
Yeah.
And then they're born with the ability to have sex and then create life. Even plants and animals, like it's you don't need to even separate them. It's just life force. I feel that
The sexual energy and life is life force. It's the same
it's
thing.
the same thing. Yeah. But we're not taught that, are we?
Yeah. No, we're not. It's
Quite
totally
opposite.
opposite. It's actually
It's
totally
very
opposite,
much
yeah.
the opposite.
There's a lot of shame around like sex, especially when I was growing up in religion and even school and the whole thing. There was a lot of shame related there,
Yeah.
especially in Christianity, I suppose, where it's like,
Yeah,
I think now.
sex ed.
But I think like one of the big things that like, I think when you like the what I'm trying to say here, just pornography and masturbation for males is a huge thing. I personally believe that. Like when you're that energy, that life force that you're kind of wasting and you're giving out without actually utilizing that energy to creativity is like one of the biggest things, like when it comes to you like growing through your through your journey, because when you're spending your time and you're wasting that energy, like that energy is life force energy. It's like creative energy that you should be utilizing positively. I think the man from Think and Grow Rich, is it Think and Grow Rich? Napoleon Hill says this, that it seems like it's a one of those things like when men get married or when they find a solid, stable partner, they start utilizing that life force energy to grow, because they're actually utilizing it creatively and they're utilizing it to impact their lives positively. Whereas when you're young, you're wasting that energy doing really dumb, stupid shit. So like when you I think that just solidifies the construct that sexual energy is important energy for both males and females, but for the masculine, I feel like that sexual energy is what you can use potentially to move yourself to the next,
change your reality,
to change your reality. So
Yeah.
and and like the pornography industry, like in my belief, is probably like one of the most toxic industries for males.
Yeah, it turns man into a beast, essentially. I
exactly.
think. Well, depending on what the pornography is, but I'm pretty sure it really does lower your vibration when you're watching that kind of stuff. But that content is not good to be rattling around in your mind, you know?
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, like I was 12 years old, and like one of my friends brought a porn magazine to school, and then, like you're seeing it on the phone, and you're seeing it on it's like, holy shit, it's like all these like neurochemicals are just like going off in your brain.
Yeah.
And then only like years later, you realize, like, hey, this is fucking not normal. You have to detox this completely. So I haven't like watched porn in like 8 years.
Yeah.
And to detox completely. And I remember at the beginning, when I was trying to get rid of it, it was like, it was so addicting. That whole like whatever was going on.
Yeah.
Super addicting.
Yeah, the way it distorts your reality of the genders, right?
Yeah.
Is just unreal. And the thing is, like, you know, a lot of it too goes to, I feel, the idea, issues around performance, right, for men. You know, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, like from the men that I've spoken to, from my partner and my male friends, like performance is a massive thing in the bedroom, like sexually, like the need to perform, or the feeling like, you know, you need to perform. And I feel like a lot of that comes down to, the goal to have sex is to finish, is to orgasm, is to ejaculate. There's always this, you know, somewhere we're always getting, you know what I mean? And with porn, everything is rushed. There's no connection. There's actually one of my friends, she actually remember said to me once, she said, there's actually porn you can get that's almost like enlightened porn. So it's porn where it's not disrespectful, it's not abusive, it's not unrealistic. It's actually a lot about the kind of connection that you would see between partners that are having that unifying experience. There's actually porn out there that is really trying to feed into society, like how sex and relationships and intimacy and those experiences are, and how they can actually be. Like even things like eye gazing. So like in this kind of porn, there's a website something specifically, like eye gazing. They do not break eye contact the entire time.
Yeah.
Like even that, when do you ever see that in porn, really? And eye gazing, I feel, is something in relationships that seems so, it feels so threatening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Even when you look at someone's eyes for too long, it's like,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, eye gazing is, you know, I'll have people come in and I'll be like, yeah, you know, so we'll be talking about something's come up with a sexual block. I said, you know, is it your libido? She's like, oh, no problem with libido. And I was like, intimacy? She's like, no, like I said, I have no problem with, like, libido. And I was like, okay, like, intimacy. And I was like, so, she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, and I didn't even get to finish when I said eye gazing. I was like, she's like, oh my God, no. She was like, what do you mean? I don't need eye gazing with my partner. And I was like,
that's weird.
let me just figure out what's going on here. And I was holding the space and I was like, yes, that's intimacy. I was like, intimacy. Into me, see. Right?
True.
Right? What's intimacy, into me, see, if you're not seeing into the person that you're having that experience with, right? How can you be intimate when you're not even, when you're not having that connection there? You know, and also flipping it the other way, into me, see, you need to let them into me, see for you as well.
Yeah.
It's that opening, that vulnerability. And porn doesn't have that. Mainstream porn doesn't have that. There isn't that vulnerability. There isn't that, and it doesn't mean soft, passive sex. You can still be assertive and animalistic and hot and wild while maintaining that eye contact and maintaining that level of vulnerability. You can still have the polarities of feminine and masculine, submissive and dominant, without it being just vessels or just like shells of people, you know?
Yeah.
Into me, see, like you see past what is there, and that's where that energy flow can come from, right? And yeah, so there is actually porn out there that my female friend actually showed me, and she was like, I show this to men, like she would tell this to like male partners and stuff. She's like, this is what you can be looking at, you know. And I guess it comes to like you know, not all technology is bad. Same thing, not all porn is bad. It depends what kind of porn you're looking at.
That's very
That's
true.
true, yeah.
You know, it's because it's not, again, like it's again, we have that word again for porn, that's bad, but there are people out there and they watch it, and it's almost like sex education. Like they're learning, they've never seen how to treat a woman. They're listening to their friends that are like, oh yeah, like take that girl home, or yeah, and it's this competition, right? It's glorified. Or you've got women, oh yeah, no, be a slut. It's the opposite, you know, repress shame. We don't even learn it from our friends. We definitely don't learn it from our parents. I don't think any of us did.
I learned it from American Pie.
Hey, there you go. Okay, well, another example.
Movies like that, you know, like it gets the idea in your head, and then you do some research. Like, okay, but the whole society around it's pretty toxic culture, I would say. Especially when I was 18, like.
Yeah.
That first boy.
Yeah. Represent. Yeah, it's so I was really amazed when I started dating Theo, and he told me that he does Taoist practices, so sexual practices. So he does practices with himself, like self-pleasure, to cultivate his energy to the point where he can have like a climactic orgasm without like ejaculating. Yeah.
Wow.
And multiple, infinite, and that. I think if men can learn to do that, which anyone can if you've got a dick, which they all do, you know, unless you identify as otherwise, you can literally do that. And as a woman, like literally after you do that, because you haven't ejaculated, you can literally like keep going forever until you're done. Like, and that, so a lot of Taoist practices, but again, it's about cultivating that life force and that sexual energy and drawing it up to the other chakras in the body, you know. So I was like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
Yeah.
You know,
I've heard about that through like Tantra and that sort of thing. I never thought it was really possible, but then when you learn about the energy body and like chakras and everything like that, it's like, well, obviously definitely is possible.
But
you teach this stuff in your workshops that are coming up? Is this what they're about?
So Theo is actually doing his Tantra teacher training, it's a tongue twister, Tantra teacher training course at the moment. So he'll be finished early next year.
Wow, okay.
But again, he's had so much experience in like all of his housemates. He's taught to all the housemates, and it's beautiful. It's really wonderful to see men like communicating so openly about something that we shame so much about, not just into gender, but you know, like literally within your own gender, like talking about like that kind of stuff, and in the intimate realm. So we exchanged a lot about our previous relationships and experiences with sex, and he and I are both really passionate in wanting to teach that, to reignite that intimacy again, not from the ego, but from that place that is very vulnerable too. So you've got to be willing to be vulnerable to go there. You know, you've got to go in with that white belt mindset, like that I don't know anything. And a lot of men and women too don't want to go in there because it feels too vulnerable to go there. But man, the ones that do, like the things that they can get in self-development too from that is just amazing. Like absolutely, like I mean, sex is one of the things that a lot of relationships fall apart over. Cheating, not saying that anyone has a right to cheat. I've cheated and I've been cheated on, and it's never an excuse, but it can be and is a precursor to having affairs, and that, you know, it's that combination between not understanding why we're having sex, not wanting to have that intimacy or even acknowledge that it's a problem most of the time, right? No communication between what I want and what you want, and you know, being that open communication, and that feeling of dishonesty, you know, and in that with porn and everything else, and that is just the perfect concoction for an affair, because you get what you think you want, which even then isn't what you're capable of with your partner, which is that intimacy, you know, and you get it from elsewhere. You're not going to say because you've got that shame, and then it's just a big shitball that just keeps rolling and getting bigger, you know.
That's true, yeah.
And people say sex isn't important, and that's up to opinion. I had that opinion in my last relationship. I was 7 years. I had a very low libido. Very, very rarely had sex, like maybe like once, like every 3 weeks or a month. it got to in the end.
Yeah.
I convinced myself it wasn't a problem. We never really talked about it. And I very much understood now. I was just like, how was I only having sex once once every 3 weeks or once a month? Like, because once that life force gets activated, it's not about sex. Like, I'm now creating, I'm doing a podcast, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and it's not just stayed in that area. And so I don't believe that sex is not important.
So what do you think was
It's
like
important.
blocking your libido at the time? Was it physical, mental, spiritual, or was it just?
Yeah, well, I had issues with having boundaries crossed when I was younger, and I actually never knew that it was sexual abuse. I never thought of it as sexual abuse. I grew up in the UK. It's a very young age where those conversations are happening, like between your friends, and yeah, I never saw it as abuse. I just saw it as, you know, someone persuading me to do something that I didn't want to do, and then it just didn't seem. One of the situations was they were basically like, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to tell everyone that you're a slut, or I'm going to tell everyone that you're frigid, or I'm going to tell everyone this. And so for me, like, that was way worse than crossing my own boundaries. And because of the lack of relationship that I had with my parents, I wasn't communicating that to them. So all of this was happening in the background, and I was 14 when that happened.
Oh, wow.
And younger too. And again, because it's just not something, we're not talking about this in respect, you know, and not enough time is spent on sex ed in school. You're talking about the science of it and how to bake babies. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, and there's porn out there. Like, it's not enough.
Yeah, that's very true.
So yeah, and then I just remember I was just driving once and I was thinking, oh my God, like, it was a Libra full moon last year. And I remember thinking, I just had this feeling, and I talked to this guy that I met, Nav, and I remember talking to him, and he said, so tell me a little biography of you. And I told him this biography of me, and it had talked about in the UK, and then I was like, and all these memories were coming up. And I was like, ooh, like, what the fuck? And I remember just driving to work, and all these memories would come up, and I was like crying, and I was like, I think I've been a victim of sexual abuse, like, a lot of times. And I was like, and it was like I was asleep for my whole life. Like, it was so suppressed and repressed. I haven't had all these memories for ages, and all the trauma is coming up through my body. And I was like, oh my God. And I messaged my friend, and I was talking to him about it that I just met, and we were talking, and it really related to me that I really thought that I just had low libido and it wasn't a problem. But I think I was like protecting myself. You know, I was protecting myself from, because I still didn't have that intimacy. I didn't know what intimacy was. And I had been cheated on in my last relationship. At this point, I'd been cheated on a couple of times, and in previous relationships too. And already that's not creating a feeling of safety. And that is mimicking exactly how I didn't still feel safe as a child in a different context, you know? I felt like I was manipulated and my boundaries were crossed. And sometimes with the ego, it doesn't put things into sharp boxes like that. Things can blend.
Yeah.
And so, ironically, I had a guy come over who does massage, and he helps to get rid of traumatic emotional blocks from the body through massage. And he released that block for me, and I felt it. And it wasn't just the one block, like, he opened almost like the lid off, because this is something I wasn't even aware of. It just blew my mind. And I remember,
where was that stored in the body exactly? Was it?
It was like literally around my root chakra. I was really all the way down. I'm all up here in the third eye and the crown chakra, and it's all the way deep down in the basic root chakra, and in the sacral too, because that's where emotions are stored, feelings are stored, creativity. Because my creativity was blocked.
That's where the energy
comes
from the base, right?
That's it. Your sexual intimacy is here. That's why, again, creativity and your sexual intimacy both belong to the same chakra. But the feeling of safety comes from your root chakra, because that's the primary need before anything. For humans. And I remember communicating it to my partner, and it just wasn't, I felt like it wasn't taken as seriously, maybe because it had been so long, and it might have been a little bit of, why didn't you say this before, or you know, it wasn't really, but I didn't even really understand it. And I remember saying to him, I want to try tantra, I want to try, like, I want to like fix this, like, I actually want to make it better. But he was like, that's kind of woo-woo sort of thing, and wasn't interested. So I got this guy over, and he got rid of the block. And after he got rid of the block, a week later, that's when my ex left. Out of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
Out of nowhere. Like...
So you reckon, like, these things can actually play, like, a physical manifestation of that block would be your partner
A
at the
partner,
time.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
But he played his role, right? And I would have played my role for him because I wouldn't be where I am if he didn't show me spirit signs.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and then and it was devastating to me at the time. But then, ironically enough, fate played its way, and 2 months later, I'm dating Theo, which is the guy that came over and massaged me and got rid of the block in the first place.
Damn. Okay.
Nothing was there when he first massaged me. There was nothing there. And even leading up, and fate played its role. Everything that I went through as a child, for me to have that experience, to be put in that dark place again, to call on him, a friend of a friend. I know someone, he's my housemate, and to come over and do that, for then me now to be dating him and us be delivering what we are to everyone. So so I think it can come from a lot of things. I think it can come from past life and intergenerational stuff. It might not be what you remember, and a lot of trauma can be repressed because it's the body trying to protect you, right? 5% conscious, 95% unconscious, the way your brain's divided up. So we don't even know that we don't know.
Very true.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
And sometimes you think it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't, but it's not often the case. It might feel better that way because you have control, thinking, oh yeah, that's a problem. But the real problem is you don't even know what the problem is.
Yeah.
You got to know that first.
True.
You know, so I think it can come from a lot of things. But yeah, definitely for me, and I think for a lot of men and women, and was that, and talking to my male friends. I had a really interesting sentence, and it triggered me to begin with, but since then I fully believe in it, that women play a huge role in men abusing their power and the way that masculinity is going at the moment. And the way that I explained, I was like, oh, what the fuck, no. And I remember the way that they say that is there is this massive wave of nice guys, right? There's toxic masculinity, and then there are men that are too afraid to assert their masculinity, and there is this like nice guys. And I was thinking, why is that? And imagine you've got a woman, imagine I didn't heal from my trauma, and I have a child, it's a boy, and I'm saying, and I'm kind of obsessively compulsively programming him to be a nice guy and to open the door for the ladies and make sure you don't do this and make sure you don't do this, and almost programming, and if he gets a bit aggressive, I'm like, don't get angry, because I'm so scared that he's going to be like the guy that abused me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think I'm doing the right thing, but what I'm doing is I'm not stripping him of toxic masculinity. I'm stripping him of feeling safe to express his emotions, and a lot of that is what creates toxic masculinity in the first place.
Yeah, it's that duality effect of the pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think you're nurturing, and you might be. And again, everything for a reason. Everyone has that shit to grow from, and that takes us to our destiny. But you know, yeah, like our own trauma, through the best of intentions, can keep perpetuating that same trauma. Because a lot of nice guys actually have a lot of rage. And that was my last relationship from my perspective. He was like a nice guy, but a lot of rage. And he wouldn't often, it would come across as frustration, but it would never actually come out as anger bursts. I remember saying, oh, he's so nice, you know, but it started to come out more and more and more and more, but it was still, in the end, it was never these massive bursts. And even in the end, when he left, there was no conversation about it. There was that inability to be able to express his emotions, you know? And I think that can be as damaging as someone that's excessively toxic and physically abusive.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, it's that feeling too scared to be in the Me Too movement to the point where it's all the way over the other end, you know, and not able to claim that their assertiveness, you know, and a lot of women say, I want the bad boys. I was like, I don't think you want a bad boy. I think you want someone that's assertive.
Yeah.
Someone that's assertive, someone that is confident and grounded. But they only get that. They're just in this. They've got bad guys and nice guys. That's it. That's all the thing they have. They've probably only ever had one. And what the bad guy gave them was that dominance, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we're going to do. And with femininity, like, a lot of women love that. I love that when I'm with Theo. Like, it's natural for one of us to take the polarity and one to take one submissive and one dominant, and then you can change, and we do change, you know. But when you've got a guy that's only nice in the nice guy and is so afraid for the assertiveness, that woman needs to step up into her assertiveness. So now she's taking the masculine role.
Yeah.
And as a woman, we sometimes just want to, like, be ravaged and be explored and be, you know, so a lot of time when you've got women that are unsatisfied, it can be because their husband has lost that assertiveness, that primal instinct that they had maybe when they first met, right? And they've become a bit complacent, and it's kind of like, just the nice guy. But that assertiveness, you can call on that whenever, if you have access to your emotions. It doesn't matter how long you've been dating for. So yeah, it's that was really cool for me to hear, women play that part, and people might get offended by that, but that's fine. I don't mean to cause offense, but I do believe in that, and I don't think it's with ill intent. I think it's we're trying to do the best, but we're trying to breed all the anger out of men. But that's not the problem. Yeah. If you've got a knife, isn't the problem. It depends who you give it to.
Yeah.
You know
that
what
is
I mean?
true. Yeah.
Anger is not a problem. If I've got someone and someone's coming to sexually assault me, and I'm with my friend Ben, doesn't really exist, Ben, and he's a nice guy and he doesn't like to cause conflict, I don't want to be with him when someone's going to physically assault me. I want to be with Greg, who is can call on that assertiveness if he has to. Yeah. So there's a place for everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't. Same with women with sensitivity. Yeah, there are women out there that are toxically sensitive and project and blame it on the men. It's because you don't fulfill my needs, and they're constantly like, save me, save me, save me. And there are also women that are driven by success. They are the breadwinner. There's no emotionality. I am empowered. I am independent. And don't get me wrong, there are women that can have that with being feminine, but a lot of them can be this independence. I'm so empowered. I don't need a man. And there's this, the walls are up. There's no femininity. There's no room for emotion in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's the same on it's the same on both ends. So yeah, I've learned a lot about the polarity of sexuality since I've been dating Theo. Because he was a guy that was in his toxic masculinity with anger, and he's seeing guys that are over here, because we tend to attract the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And now he's found his way in the middle by being able to assert himself, but not in a way that is detrimental or abusive to someone else.
Yeah.
But doesn't make him any less of a man,
Yeah.
You can still have that anger and call on it when you need to. So you should.
Yeah.
No
Absolutely,
emotions should be gotten rid of. They all
have their
their
place.
purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what it's about, expressing the full range of human emotion. But if you don't feel safe, because your mom's trying to make you a nice guy, you're a good boy, you're a nice boy, you're a good girl.
Yeah.
That's women not expressing their boundaries too. And shit, this is the perfect fucking pancake mix of a shitstorm of things going wrong and everyone blaming the other gender. No, we're all involved.
Yeah.
We're all involved. It's no one's fault, but it's all of our responsibility. Fault is past tense, responsibility is future tense. It's all of our responsibility. It doesn't matter whose fault it is,
Yeah. I think it's a lot of whole bunch of self-responsibility. This is where the whole red pill society comes in. Just I'm not sure if it's a Reddit group or it's just a movement at the moment with the male side of things, where they do understand that there's that nice guy and there's also that toxic masculine, but I believe that's where the red pill society has kind of been founded from. So even though I do understand there's the nice guy and there's the red pill alpha, whatever, it's very important for you to understand that you have to understand your emotions to kind of be a truly masculine, to hold that masculine space and lead, but not do it in a way that's toxic, or it's not in a way that's over assertive. And if you truly understand your own emotions, whereas just when you're younger, when you're experiencing rage, you're all right, why am I angry? Where's this emotion coming from? Is there someone I need to sit down with? Why I should sit down with this emotion and truly feel and figure out where it's coming from. And also at the same time, if you're a male and you have big ambitions, you have to be able to draw the line between being assertive, and also, what's the word I'm looking for? Assertive, passive, and letting people walk all over you. Because at the end, and be agreeable. Because you can't be overly agreeable. Because if you're overly agreeable, it makes it more difficult for you to achieve the higher places. Not higher places, but if you have extreme ambitions. If you want to be a CEO of a company, and you're making deals and you're trying to lock down deals, yes, you do have to be assertive, but you do have to be very assertive. At the same time, you can't be overly agreeable, because you have to know what you want, what's the best for yourself, what's best for your company, what's best for your people, and also have to find a good middle ground for both sides. So that's why I kind of believe that you have to find that middle ground, understanding yourself, understanding your emotion, and connecting with your masculine energy, but also spending the same amount of time and energy working with your own feminine. Understanding your own feminine energy in terms of like emotions, where you are, and that's where all the creativity comes from, and the drive comes from the masculine. So if you don't have right now, I feel like it's so polarized, and people are not
It's either one or the other.
It's just one or
you
the
can't
other.
balance in both.
Yeah, you
I
can't
feel like I
balance in
swing
both.
from back and forth all the time.
Everyone
I go very,
does.
very assertive. I'm like, oh, now
lot
I'm
of
being aggressive.
creatives
Like, step
do.
back, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I doing now? Now I'm just being I said not that word, to the word pansy,
Yes,
but
yes.
now I'm just being too soft and too agreeable, and it's just like my boundaries being all walked over, and I'm feeling this depleted within myself. And I go super assertive again. It's like these weird cycles. I'm trying to like balance both of them
Of course,
Yeah.
in a healthy way. Yeah.
That's why a lot of creators, not why, but I find a lot of creatives that tend to be in their feminine and create extremely intuitive and artistic, don't have or don't allow themselves to call on the masculine quality of asserting their artwork.
Yeah.
Tell people what you're doing. Put your thing into the store or whatever. That's a very masculine trait. Or a lot of people might be like, oh, I don't want to set goals. I just really enjoy doing my art, but also they're broke as fuck and they want to be earning money
Yeah.
from what they're doing, but they're too afraid to claim that and to kind of make a statement of, here I am, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and put the action in behind it.
100%.
And you've got people that are doing, and they're not feeling it all.
Well, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's leading others by leading yourself, right?
True.
That's the only way
Yeah.
to do it.
Now, where can people find you, by the way?
You can find me on my website, which is rebecca.dawnworrall.com. And then my Instagram handle is @rebecca.dawn.worrall. And I tend to be on Instagram more often than not. And yeah, all the info is on my website about how to work with me, like one-on-one workshops. And then most of my content is on Instagram. And I've got my podcast too, which is called Be Empowered on Spotify.
Beautiful.
Yeah, which is good. So yeah, all of that is available on Instagram. All the links are kind of there. So.
Yeah.
And what's your next big project, your next big step that you're aiming towards right now?
My next big step is creating a offer or a way of being able to bring people together or community together for the purpose of investigating into self in different types of I guess potency. So for example, my next thing is a group program. The next thing, I've worked with a lot of one-on-one clients. I work with a lot of workshops. The next thing that I want to do is create something where it's like a group program where you can create, a semi-private experience with me and really go into that, really go in deep, but be in the presence of community as well. Like while other people that are doing that with you, I tend to work really well in groups as an attendee as well. And I'm also going to be doing my astrology studies for the next 4 years as well, which will be really
That sounds cool.
exciting. Yeah. So just,
Where do you study that?
So it's going to be online, and it's a 4-year degree.
4 years, that's
4
huge.
years.
And you're already really good with astrology, so this is going to be
It's going to be
supercharged.
next level. Yeah, and I think it's where this all started was the space of, oh my God, everyone needs to know this. Like, because that's how I felt. I was like, oh my God, how did I not know this? And I want to keep everything coming from that place within me, because that's that child-like place within me. And I feel that way about astrology. And I want to be able to, again, communicate that in a better way. So I love when things like that come from that excitement. It's the same thing with the sexual intimacy. I was like, everyone needs to know about this. That's Theo's journey. And so I'm really excited to be working with astrology, breathwork, and bringing that Eastern philosophy in, just giving tools to
When you're feeling drained, how do you kind of recuperate that energy?
Epsom salt bath, just meditating, no technology, just literally being as much as I
Yeah.
can. I feel like nature is really good. It just knows what to do.
Yeah.
You know, nature just knows how to realign you. So I'll just go back into nature and just try to be, I think, just being as present as we can, because that's where all our life force comes from, is from
In the moment.
the present,
The
right?
present,
We eat
yeah.
food in the present, we drink in the present, you know. The more you're living in the past or the future, that's where your energy is going. So I feel like after, rather than dwelling on, oh, my workshop was so draining, I'll sit with the feeling of what it might feel like to be drained or to
Yeah.
have less. And I feel like if I can kind of detach from the story, my energy will naturally start to come back, because that's
Yeah.
what my body wants.
Oh wow, okay. So
But
the
as
story
soon
of
as I'm
belief is
like-
that holding you back.
Yeah, so as soon as I'm drained because of this, my body's like, oh yeah, and it's this story, and I feel like if we buy into that story, we create a timeline. Or, you know, I broke my leg then. It's like, okay, well, if you believe in that story, then you're in space-time, and it means, okay, usually a broken leg takes this long to fix. And have you guys heard of Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
So you know, he fixed his own back with meditation in like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Access that liberation within yourself.
I really admire how you take action on all these things in your
Yeah.
workshops and your content. Everything's so consistent. It's very inspiring to see. So
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I really received that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me onto your podcast.
No worries.
guys.
No, it was a
Fat
blessing.
chat.
On to the other side, yeah.